Following this week's fiery public meeting, the owners say they're prepared to fight City Centre's latest proposal. Claiming the committee is unaccountable and inefficient, they're planning to join forces and suggest a number of ideas to the local government minister, including a major restructure.
This committee should be dismantled. We would like to see it reorganised in a proper constitutional manner whereby the people on the board have voted for.
Property owners and retailers outside the inner city area say they're not getting value for money when it comes to promotions organised around the mall, describing the move to double the benefit levy as outrageous. According to Councillor John Tate, at last night's council briefing session, a private consultant backed the idea for retailers in Newcastle's West End and Derby Street to break away and handle their own affairs.
There is an opportunity here to grasp a way of resolving that conflict, give the West End traders what they want, give the Derby Street traders what they want, and that is to be self-sufficient and have the ability to spend the money that they raise or their rate levy.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
This is what Newcastle Council and the City Centre Committee would like to see more of in the Hunter Street Mall. They're keen to encourage outdoor eating, markets and a more friendly cosmopolitan-type atmosphere. Central to that is linking the mall with the harbour foreshore.
We've got this wonderful resource, which is the foreshore, which for too long has been physically separated from the mall, and it's a resource that we should be capitalising upon.
Overhead walkways at Perkins and Market Streets will be abolished, and instead tree-lined paths will wind between the two. Scott Street will become an attractive boulevard, and there'll be plenty in the mall to attract those visiting the foreshore. Market Square behind me was the original marketplace in Newcastle, and it may once again be a bustling type bazaar, with plans to introduce weekend markets similar to those operating at the Rocks in Sydney.
The mall will become a thing that's totally different from Garden City and from Charlestown, that they're the places that it's seen to be competing with, because it's got experiences that you just can't get in those places.
The revitalisation plans will be on display in the mall for the next few weeks. All that remains is council approval, and work can begin on the new look $7 million mall.
We hope to implement over the next 3 years, and we hope to make a start on at least parts of it in the next financial year.
Jodie McKay, NBN News.
It's a problem for most towns and cities, a subculture with colour and flair. In Newcastle, the situation has become so bad over the past year, Council has its own two-man clean-up unit. Graffitiing is a criminal offence. Every week youths appear before Newcastle's Children's Magistrate charged with such cases of malicious damage.
We can have as few as 1 or 2 a month. We can have 6 in the morning. A lot depends on the police activity and how active the police have been.
But there are moves underway to curb the trend. Representatives from council, police and the courts are planning to make youths charged with graffitiing pay in time and effort for their offence. In future, they'll be expected to clean up their damage.
Now, I know there's a large group in the community who want to lock them up. I do not believe that's the answer. The answer is to show them better ways of doing things.
It's not terribly strong here in Newcastle yet, and what I'd like to see is let's get it contained before it becomes a big problem, or a bigger problem.
Melinda Smith, NBN News. This group of 40 high school principals and leading teachers from throughout the Hunter are the first to meet across the country. Under discussion, a national scheme known as Profiles, tipped to radically change the process of learning.
The students will have a greater understanding of what they have achieved. They won't need someone to tell them necessarily. They will know themselves, and so they will be able to report to their parents on the achievements they've made in particular subject areas.
The scheme is the result of a joint effort by state and federal education chiefs, all agreeing on a national framework to ensure students gain similar results from their learning.
Teachers will be able to determine, on the evidence that a child presents, which level the child is working at, discuss that with the child and with the parents, and then look at the sorts of outcomes or achievements that child will have to master as they move towards the next level.
In all, 8 levels will be introduced into primary and secondary schools early next year, with the aim of helping students take more control over their learning process.
I think sometimes at the moment they're not clear on what they have achieved or what it is they need to do next to progress further.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
Radio station 2HD is the Hunter's only commercial AM radio station. Despite an FM licence being available, 2HD has stayed on the AM band and continued to rate well. Today, though, 2HD broadcasters launched a bid into the FM arena with a takeover attempt of top-rating New FM.
This morning, the company New FM was served with a Part A statement, which is an offer by 2HD to acquire the shares in the company for $1.20 cash per share.
Over the last couple of weeks, 2HD has increased its shareholding in New FM by 2% to a total of 16%. The 45 New FM shareholders have 14 days to consider 2HD's offer. Solicitor David Carr is confident the takeover will be successful. Buying New FM would cost 2HD $1.76 million. Mr. Carr says New FM would remain a rock station with news and talk kept for the AM band. The takeover of New FM follows the recent purchase of the former 2NX by KOFM.
It's happening in broadcasting, particularly radio, throughout Australia, where markets such as Newcastle that aren't really large enough to support the number of radio stations they have are finding that common ownership is coming into play. In fact, the Broadcasting Act was amended 18 months ago to permit this sort of thing to happen.
Managing Director of New FM, Mike Webb, said today he couldn't comment on the bid until after tomorrow's Board of Directors meeting. He did say, however, that the bid was not friendly and he was taken by absolute surprise when papers were served on him this morning. Mr. Webb is the majority shareholder of New FM. He says, though, he has no interest in selling his 21% share to 2HD. Jodie McKay, NBN News. The agreement signed this afternoon will bring the Mater under the same umbrella as 57 other hospitals, including St Vincent's in Sydney. A team of health consultants will be brought in to implement changes to management and the daily running of the hospital. Although the Mater is a public hospital funded by the Hunter Area Health Service, the team will also examine the hospital's finances and whether more beds are required.
Every hospital is looking at its bed numbers and looking at its level of funding. and they'll do that every year, year in and year out. It's a very pressured situation.
Mr Rigby says the Catholic Healthcare Organisation will do all it can to help the hospital, and that may include increasing funding.
This is a public hospital receiving public funds, and in fact it's very difficult for such institutions to raise private money, but we would explore every opportunity.
The Sisters of Mercy, who run the Mater, have welcomed the agreement.
This collaboration with Australian Catholic Healthcare means the securing of a brighter future for the Mater Hospital and of the continuation of excellent care for the people that come to the Mater Hospital as patients.
The day began well for the Novocastrians as Darren Burgess and Dave MacArthur powered through the bumpy 1 metre waves to progress from the first heat. The trend continued when Merryweather's Luke Egan and Matt Hoy survived the closest of encounters with clubmate Chad Edser and Narrabeen's Kai Fitzgerald.
I thought I wasn't getting no way I'd be getting through, but I just thought I just got to get one to show everyone I can surf, so I just had a go at it and it ended up going right through. I sort of didn't surf it that good, I was just lucky it was a good wave.
The local dominance lasted throughout the day as dark horse Simon Robinson continued his run and Nick Wood and Simon Law quinelled their round 3 heat.
I'm just going to take each heat by one and see how I go. With the surf being up, it's more to my liking, so I'm pretty stoked.
Powerful American Taylor Knox looked impressive in eliminating Lennox Head's Sean Munro, but the performance of the day belonged to Avoca's Shane Powell, who was devastating in a heat that saw close friend Shane Herring knocked out. The women's event also began with the early standout being Byron Bay's former Surfest champion, Michelle Donoghue.
I had to go in the trials before the trials here at this event because I was a late entry. I forgot to put my entry form in, and it was kind of scary because I've been seeded for so many years. So it's a relief to be through.
The women's final will be contested tomorrow, the men's and longboards on Sunday. Bruce McKenzie, NBN News.
All the Newcastle players who took part in today's trial games have signalled their intention to play for the city in the new expanded Sydney comp next year. There was plenty of feeling between the two camps today after last year's farce that granted Central Coast acceptance to the competition and then withdrew the invitation to allow Newcastle entry. Newcastle selectors couldn't be happier though because it brought the best out in their side, each player fully aware they were competing for a spot in the Country Week side to be named on Tuesday and eventually the 1995 team to play in Sydney.
It came to a head over the weekend when the long-established Newcastle Ports Towage Services refused to supply only one tug to make up the Regulation 4 required to help the Iron Spencer into port. Again this afternoon, BHP called on Newcastle Ports Towage to provide a tugboat, but the company again refused, saying it would not supply a single vessel to help a rival company compete against it when all 4 of its tugs are available. The BHP-owned Hunter Ports Towage Services has only 3 tugs, and they were in position at the harbour entrance this afternoon, waiting once again to no avail for the Iron Spencer. BHP says the rival company's action contravenes an operating licence requirement laid down by the MSB's Hunter Ports Authority. But Newcastle Ports Towage disputes this, saying that it will cooperate when its other vessels are engaged, such as last Tuesday when it helped bring in the Iron Kembler. Both sides and the Hunter Ports Authority are consulting lawyers to try and help settle the dispute, while the Iron Spencer rides at anchor with a cargo of iron ore and the Iron Kembler remains tied up, waiting on a cargo of coal.
Following the discovery of the teenager's body near Toronto early Saturday, police launched an intensive investigation. The girl was found fully clothed, but despite releasing a detailed description and information on distinguishing features, including a large wart on her right hand, police had no leads to follow. The breakthrough came on Sunday night, after photographs of the girl were given to the media.
Well, as a result of the media releasing the photographs and the description, relatives rang up. Plus, there was information come from referral centre at the Cross.
It's believed Melissa Lee Astle, who lived with her grandparents in Orange since she was 10, had been working for the past 6 months as a prostitute at Sydney's King's Cross, where she was known as Sophie.
We don't know a lot about the girl's parents. The mother is somewhere on the north coast and the father is, we believe, deceased.
Today, the girl's shocked grandmother confirmed that Melissa had suffered an overdose before Christmas and that she was receiving social welfare payments.
I've got no power, to sort of keep her home. The social workers taken that power. We got no say in our children anymore. Maybe for them, I reckon she'd still be alive.
Police are waiting on toxicology test results before establishing the exact cause of death. However, Melissa's family believe drugs were involved. Now that the teenager has been identified, police say they will centre their investigations around her last movements. They're focusing their inquiries in the King's Cross area and looking for possible links around Toronto near Lake Macquarie. Anyone with further information is asked to contact their nearest police station or Toronto detectives. Melinda Smith, NBN News. This year's senior concert was a sellout. At $2 a ticket, 5,000 pensioners attended the first concert, another 3,000 booked in for the afternoon session. They'd come to see some local talent, but they were in for a treat with one of Australia's highest record sellers, Kamal. And the entertainment has just begun. Across the Hunter, a number of events and attractions have been planned to celebrate Senior Citizens Week.
Well, it gets everybody together and they will enjoy it.
I think it gives everyone a chance to see different things while the weather's good.
And if Kamal decides to come back next year, his ageless appeal has guaranteed an audience.
Is he a bit of a sex symbol for your generation?
Oh, I'd say so. Still is.
Yeah, well, actually the football team's been playing pretty well. They're probably one goal or a pass away from sitting on top of the competition. No, there's no great need for us to change the football team. There's a need for us to knuckle down and do the hard work that's required to continually improve.
Steve Linane built a reputation last year as a pretty hard taskmaster as a coach, and he hasn't done anything this year to change anyone's opinion.
Back up there, finish it off, get the box in.
It took over 6 months, but the town has finally stopped the grand final celebrations and is now focused on this year's cup. And although Curry went through the pre-season without a loss, it's been hard to keep the enthusiasm rearing at training, with many first graders missing.
Traditionally been a problem with shift work and mine workers and all that sort of thing, and we've got 4 recognised first graders that are struggling to come to training. They can just lob on game days and hopefully we can have a yarn to them and slot them in easily enough.
But Curry has found inspiration in other ways. In this week's Newcastle rep squad to contest the country championships, Brian Quinton is the only player from the premiership winning side to be selected.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit strange when you get one player out of 19 in the Newcastle rep team and you've won the comp the previous year. But, they've got a job to do and it suits me fine, but, the players are probably a little bit disappointed.
Cessnock, on the other hand, has been finishing off their preparations in typically quiet style. While Curry made the final with 2 wins and a draw, the Goannas won all 3 games and conceded only 18 points in the process. Cessnock are keeping mistakes to a minimum and could well turn on a few surprises tonight.
I like to find something beautiful in mundane, everyday kind of objects. And I'm trying to create a sort of intimate atmosphere, sort of find beauty in unexpected corners.
For 23-year-old Samantha Laundry, just out of university and hunting for a job, any job, making a living out of her paintings is more an ambition than a reality. For 27-year-old printmaker Graham Wilson, it's much the same story. As a printmaker, Graham can spend between a week and a month on any given work. In this exhibition, there's the chance to appreciate that.
Usually in this type of technique you exhibit the paper that you print from the wood, but I've exhibited the wood to show the amount of work that goes into it.
For sculptor Rebecca Johnson, time also plays a huge part in her work. It took weeks to create these bronze creatures.
I suppose I was just looking at simple forms of life and the evolution of the earth as an entire organism. Also, I was living on the hill and I was living in a room that was full of insects, so I think they sort of started creeping into my subconscious.
19 other artists, fresh from Newcastle University courses, also feature in the exhibition. It closes on April the 11th.
Each year, community groups in the Hunter submit applications for state government funding under the Hunter Area Assistance Scheme. Since 1985, Lake Macquarie has received $1.8 million. This year, there's $1.2 million available in the region, and being the largest council, at least in area, Lake Macquarie will get a fair percentage. Today, community representatives gathered at Spears Point to discuss what they believe are the city's greatest needs.
Crisis services in particular, 24-hour crisis service. The people are saying that a lot of services close at 5 p.m.
In the West Lake Macquarie area, the need for occasional childcare was also identified, while in Eleebana and Valentine it was a youth worker. A similar problem exists at Charlestown Square.
It attracts many youth from all over the city, and the claims are that after the centre closes that the youth are still roaming the streets and that some of them may be responsible for vandalism.
Once the needs are fully determined, they'll be ranked and funding allocated accordingly. That should happen within the next month.
Greg Naranjo moved into this property in 1992, with just a dirt road separating it from the airfield. He set up a horse stud, confident that there would only be rare usage of the airstrip and little noise to affect his horses.
Whenever you have any aeronautical activity, they are prone to being scared and irrationally run around the paddocks and into fences.
Luscantire Airfield has been used for 17 years. It is mainly used by the 9 shareholders known as Knockfin Holdings to fly their recreational planes on the weekend. They also hold charity events at the airstrip, offering children with cancer and multiple sclerosis free joy flights. They operate under a strict set of conditions set down by Maitland Council in 1989. A spokesman for Maitland Council said there had been breaches of the conditions set on Luscantire Airfield. He said Council has put Knockfin Holdings on notice that it will take action if any further breaches are committed. One of the shareholders said Knockfin Holdings had made a new development application which is aimed at cutting out the ambiguity associated with the present conditions. Maitland Council is set to make a decision on it in May. Jason Neuenhoff, NBN News.
This is the signature that can send European art collectors' hearts aflutter. And in Newcastle today, moving this truck's precious cargo had a few going on this side of the world. They were shifting more than $6 million worth of sculpture. 22 works by Auguste Rodin, the man credited with the revival of European sculpture, regarded as one of the finest sculptors of all time. It was a massive undertaking. This work alone weighs 200 kilograms. The heaviest piece tips the scales at 350 and is more than 2 metres tall.
Some of it was just wrapped in those removeless blankets, those thick felt blankets. So the patina, of course, on the surface of the sculpture is tremendously important to it. And we're always in fear and trembling that something is going to happen and it'll be scratched. But so far, so good.
There were a few tense moments, of course, like, how should you treat a bronze lady? But mostly the work was slow and steady, and by Wednesday the exhibition will be open for all to enjoy, courtesy of its owner, William Bowmore.
People have an opportunity to see the largest number of Rodins ever assembled in one spot. And of course it's Mr. Bowmore who has made this possible.
Newcastle's Trudy Musgrave was among the first players to head out for the commencement of the quarter-finals. The event was rained out yesterday. The tournament sees about 50 of the best up-and-comers looking to break into the top ranks of tennis. 16 of the world's best female players and 24 men have played their way through elimination rounds for a share of the $10,000 in prize money. Trudy Musgrave's hopes were dashed by Atsuku Shintani, who took the first set in the ladies' singles to 6-3 and the second to a tiebreaker. Shintani meets Angie Marek in tomorrow's semi-finals. Play will also feature the men's semi-finals rounds and on Sunday the finals.
The first anyone knew of the crash was around 6:30 this morning when a passing motorist noticed an injured man on the side of Nowandock Road near St George. Police believe two 20-year-old men from the St George Wingham area had been travelling west along Nowandock Road when their Datsun sedan left the road and collided with a tree. The driver was killed instantly. His male passenger, suffering major internal injuries, managed to climb from the wreckage and crawl up to the roadside. While emergency crews worked to cut the dead man free, Westpac was called in to transport the injured male to John Hunter Hospital. Despite their efforts, the Wingham man was pronounced dead on arrival. And a two-vehicle crash on the Pacific Highway 15 kilometres north of Raymond Terrace had traffic banked up for several kilometres. Shortly after 11:30 this morning, a Ford Laser sedan was travelling north on the inside lane of the dual carriageway. Police say the vehicle attempted to change to the outside lane in front of a semi-trailer travelling in the same direction. The car and the semi collided, causing the sedan to leave the road and overturn. The driver of the truck was uninjured. The sedan's 3 occupants, all from Newcastle, weren't as lucky. The 71-year-old driver sustained head injuries, as did his 95-year-old mother, who was a rear seat passenger. They were both airlifted to John Hunter Hospital in a stable condition. The 26-year-old grandson, a front seat passenger, suffered minor lacerations.
There's a split in the Labor Party and it's got grassroots members worried, particularly in the Labor-dominated Hunter, where around 250 rank-and-file members gathered today. The furor is over moves by the Sydney-based Administrative Committee to change the pre-selection system. It's already suspended pre-selection for party candidates in 2 Sydney seats, outraging members.
Well, I feel it's very important that the rank and file have their part to play in choosing who they want to represent them.
Well, I think it's a disaster for the party that it even has come to this.
Organised by local Labor MPs, the meeting was addressed by the party's General Secretary and right-wing supporter John Della Bosca. Alongside him, left-wing Assistant Secretary Anthony Albanese. The proposed changes were unanimously rejected by the meeting, which voted to support 2 resolutions. The first demanded the committee reinstate and uphold pre-selection rules. The other, a move of solidarity for the system to remain unchanged.
And it's a pretty elitist assumption that a few boys at the top of the party know better than the rank and file on the ground in the Hunter electorates who should be the members representing the Newcastle region.